When I was a child, my parents bought me a 1,000-piece jigsaw puzzle. A puzzle I never solved, yet in later years I learned that my failure was not due to my own lack of ability or vision, but a wrong perspective. All could see the cluttered mess of countless cardboard cutouts laid out across my table, but what if I told you that I wasn't looking at a puzzle, but a broken piece of art? He who is to solve the puzzle must first be able to imagine the artwork before it is whole, something so many of us struggle with in our world of various puzzle pieces. Though all of us are tasked with solving the puzzle, some see only the divides in our cultures. They see our divides as weakening and separating us into hierarchy, and they turn to what causes our shortcomings as a multicultural society. They turn to discrimination. They turn to racism. Racism, a vile philosophy seeking only to assimilate and eliminate those it sees as worthless in its narrow view. Rather than embracing all our cultures that allow us to bind as one, they begin to snip at the cultures of others, like a child cutting at the pieces of a puzzle, trying to make it fit by their flawed design. Oppression and suffering inflicted on fellow human beings because of their race, gender, religion, or ethnicity. Though some try to turn a blind eye, we can only begin to heal when we acknowledge that it exists. It exists. It exists in our institutions, where tangata whenua make up less than 40% of all homeowners. It exists in our schools, where a Muslim girl was beaten and stripped of her hijab because of her faith. It exists in our country, where 150,000 people report being discriminated against each year. Shocked! Everybody seems so shocked when we read these statistics and we tell these stories. We rush and run to bring support to the victim, but cure can never work as well as prevention. Where was preparation when Huda was beaten? Where was conversation? We need to talk to each other. We need to learn from each other's experiences so that we can be more culturally sensitive and relate better to one another. Whilst we do support the victims of discrimination, prevention is better than cure. And the remains of the trauma that stays with them is permanent. For hatred is wicked, but it is strong and long-lasting. It leaves scars that outlive a lifetime and passes down like a disease into generational trauma and hatred. Oppression takes away voice. Worst of all, it leaves us in a world lacking in diversity of thought. But a person can only be pushed so far before they begin to turn, and they turn against their brethren who watched as their freedoms were gated. They turn against the crowd who had them silenced and segregated, separated from society. They turn harsh and aggravated, turn to malice, turn to judgment, turn to revenge, turn to hatred. And then it hurts us and those who come after us, like dominoes tipping down into bitterness and mistrust, hatred among the races who really are one, and the dawn of unity we all strive for never comes. He waka e ke noa. Me mahi tahi tātou mo te oranga o te katoa. We're all in this together. We work together for the success of many. Yet still, New Zealand is divided. When we allow racism to occur against groups in our society, purposefully or not, we fail both them and us. As in the novel Things Fall Apart, when Okonkwo asks, "Why should a man suffer so grievously for an offense he committed inadvertently?" To which his elders reply, "If one finger brought oil, it soiled the others." Racism to even one halts our progress as a whole. And in the end, the greatest thing we have to lose is all that we could have gained. Like with the missing piece of a puzzle, our artwork is never complete until all of us are unified. I believe that our differences are what make our society so promising. The pieces of a puzzle are designed distinctively to interlock with each other, to not only form art, but to hold each other together. In this mutual support, we all have our own role to play, whether it be in our institutions or our daily lives. All our efforts are important. The fact that we do make an effort is important. As a Zambian New Zealander, I've learned this firsthand. I was walking through town when I was suddenly taken aback by a man heckling profanities at me and demanding that I go back to my own country. You see, I stood there slightly confused because in my mind, that's exactly where I thought I was. It remains a personal decision to be proactive in the bringing of racial unity. It is not only our onus to open up our minds, but to ensure this remains a way of life for those who come after us. See, how the village raises the child is how the child will see the world. My people, we say, children not exposed to the world think their mother is the best cook in the world. Exposure or enclosure is the question if our eyes can see and comprehend the humanity of another. For ability to empathize changes the course of mankind, and diversity starts not as an action, but a collective state of mind. To me, racial unity is not a choice, but an obligation. An obligation we must fulfill as individuals, as a society, and that must be at the heart of our institutions. It is not only our onus to open up our minds, but to ensure that this remains a way of life for those who come after us. It is our example that shapes them, and their choices that shape the future. Just as important in our collectiveness is our collectiveness in our institutions. Through our institutions, we must work to standardize the push for racial unity all across New Zealand. Initiatives that promote racial unity in our school curriculum, such as stocking our libraries with books and authors of all different ethnicities and viewpoints, and setting aside time for education on the histories, ideals, and relations of different cultures. Acknowledgement of discrimination, both past and present. Holding ourselves and others accountable to a communal standard. Responsibility to answer the call of action at the personal, social, and institutional levels. Yes, these are the steps to racial unity. All great on their own, yet nothing when they are not whole. Only are the fingers of one hand joined when they are completed by the palm. Only is our puzzle complete when we stand with interlocked arms. A society of racial unity is not a hopeful exaggeration, but an achievable reality through acceptance and accommodation. Accepting all our individual traits that make us who we are. Accommodating for one another. A world where we can see the lines of individuality and still recognize that these are pieces, part of a greater art. This is the vision for racial unity. This is the glue that firmly holds our puzzle together and the frame that allows us to encapsulate our society, unified as it was always meant to be. Ngā mihi.